Hello. Thank you, Alex, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for having me. So just a little bit more about myself. Like Alex said, my name is Britney Durst. I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner. I have a background in women's health and in urgent care experience. I have a passion for functional medicine that began when my husband started seeing a functional medicine provider about 6 years ago. He started seeing this provider to help mostly with muscle recovery, joint inflammation, and just to help improve his overall his health. Um, he saw some really amazing results in his gym performance, muscle recovery time, a lot better sleep. As a huge side note, he was able to come off of discontinue using his CPAP machine for obstructive sleep apnea, which he didn't realize was attainable. And I started looking into this functional medicine for myself due to my mother having breast cancer at the age of 36. She's doing well. She's great. Such a blessing to us. But then my brother, Brandon, he passed away from lymphoma at the age of 26. And when my brother passed away, I was currently 8 months pregnant with our fourth child. And I told myself at that point, there has to be a better way to prevent in cancer prevention for myself and for my children. And functional medicine definitely offers that approach to lifestyle-based therapies, diet, supplementation, just to name a few factors that can help control my fate and that of my children. And I know it can do that for you too. So I hope you enjoy this presentation and we can talk about longevity in your brain. So I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. Just give me a minute. Move you down here. All right. So like I said, we're going to talk about longevity in your brain So most of us, what is normal aging for the brain? As a lot of people age and we see our family members getting older, they may think it's completely normal to be forgetful, have brain fog, those senior moments where maybe you can't remember where you placed your wallet and then you eventually find it in the refrigerator, right? Most of us think that's normal, but actually no, it's not a normal aging process. And there are interventions we can initiate to prevent this so-called normal aging of our brains. So let's talk about this in more detail. Is that switching over for you guys? Sorry, there we go. There are currently piles of research that have laid evidence out as to the relationship between the gut and our brain. If you listen to the last Science of Human Optimization presentation from Marissa Belanda, she's one of our nurse practitioners also. She talked about the gut and the microbiome extensively and how it works within the gut itself. We know those microbiome who reside in the gut send hormonal signals to the mitochondria of the other microbiome, but they also send signals from the gut to the mitochondria in the brain. If you can imagine how we send a wireless message to someone, our gut microbiome can do this by signaling the brain through the bloodstream and the lymphatic system. The gut microbiome is very smart. They not only send wireless messages, but they also have a direct landline connection where they can communicate through the vagus nerve to get these messages from the gut across to the brain. So we'll talk a little bit more about the vagus nerve. Some of you may have heard this before. This direct landline connection is called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve plays a major role in the gut-brain connection. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is also called the parasympathetic nervous system. That controls many of our unconscious crucial body functions. These unconscious functions include digestion, heart rate, immune response, mood control, respiratory rate, and so forth. We know that for each nerve fiber leading from the brain to the heart, to the lungs and gut, there are 9 nerve fibers leading to the brain from those organs. So hence there's 9 times as much communication from the gut to the brain than there is going from the brain to the gut. It's pretty mind-blowing, right? Since we're talking about the brain and how wonderful it is. But you can see that our gut really does call all of the shots when we're looking at this information here on how many nerves run from the gut to the brain. So when we take a closer look at the gut, we know that the gut wall is only one single cell of mucosal cells. These cells are called enterocytes. These enterocytes are like a tightly woven stitch. They try not to prevent anything from entering or exiting the gut. At only one cell thick, this layer is very proficient at what it does. This lining of cells also has immune cells that are scattered between the enterocytes, the gut lining, to help maintain the coherence of the entire gut barrier wall. These immune cells are the deciding factor on what can leave the gut and what stays. They're literally the bouncers of the gut in this process. So the connection, when we look at this information together, we can see that the gut is very efficient at what it does. But let's take a better look at how the gut and the neurons communicate. There are more neurons that line your gut to receive and send out messages than there are in your entire spinal cord. The microbiome in the gut and their mitochondria power the neurons to send all of the signals to your brain. Your gut is continuously sending messages via the vagus nerve, but also sends those hormonal cellular messages. With these signals consistently going from the gut to the brain, anytime the lining of the gut has some discontinuity and has allowed those bad gut bugs to slip past the barrier wall and into the body, numerous chemical wireless messages, like we talked about earlier, are rapidly sent through the blood and lymph fluid. These messages are called cytokines. These cytokines are warning signals to the immune system that forthcoming threat is existent. These warning cytokines are called inflammatory cytokines. They do induce local inflammation in your gut, but also in other places in your body, like your joints and your brain. So when inflammation occurs in the brain, this is called neuroinflammation. An overgrowth of the bad microbiome drive neuroinflammation. When there continue to be high levels of inflammation in the brain, this leads to damage to the neurons, which causes cognitive decline that we see as normal aging. We can see the full circle here for sure. Neuroinflammation causes many degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and even anxiety. When gut permeability and inflammation occur, we may note many bad gut bacteria like Escherichia and Shigella increase significantly, and good gut bacteria like Eubacterium rectile decrease. And with a continuation of inflammation, the immune response is triggered almost in a constant state, which can create a systemic state of inflammation. In this picture here, we can kind of look at the neuron structure. So when we think back and remember when our inflammatory cytokines or those warning messengers give us a heads up that forthcoming threat is imminent, this creates inflammation. When these inflammatory cytokines breach the gut walls and eventually the blood-brain barrier, these send out special bodyguards called microglial cells. They step in. The microglial cells are specifically targeted to guard the neurons in our brain. When they see the invader coming toward their neuron, they clip the neuron's dendritic structures to attempt to stop the invaders. And at the top left screen, you can see those are the dendrites, little fingers that come off of the cell body. But when this happens repetitively, only the body of the neuron is left. With only a body left, it has no way to communicate with other neurons. So no wonder we get memory loss and cognitive process declines. These microglial cells are so protective of their neuron, they eventually surround the body of the neuron and protect it so that they can't even get nutrients into the neuron and the neuron can die. Sadly, this is a very common known finding in Parkinson's. Parkinson's is typically a disease that we associate with only a problem of the brain, but actually it stems from the gut. This isn't a real pretty picture here, and you probably think I've told you a lot of terrible news about these invaders and neuroinflammation, but there's a little bit more to discuss. When the gut bacteria proteins die or become dysfunctional, a product called amyloid is produced, and when inflammation is present in the body, the single gut wall layer is disrupted, and this allows these amyloids to slide right through the gut wall and are also able to climb the vagus nerve to the brain. And once in the brain, they can accelerate the production of amyloid in the brain, and amyloid proteins disrupt communication between the brain cells and also interfere with cellular functions. This process repetitively occurring causes the many issues for our gut and our brain as we age. Over time, we can see these amyloids form plaques within the brain. And when these amyloids are allowed to stay within the brain, they create more and more neurodegeneration. Some of you have probably heard this association of amyloid plaques leading to Alzheimer's or dementia. This is definitely a true association that can occur over time. One fact from the World Alzheimer's Report noted in 2015, over 46 million people were living with dementia worldwide. They expect this number to increase to 131.5 million by 2050. That's a drastic increase. And now that we've talked about all of these scary things, let's talk about how we can fix or prevent some of these things from ever happening. And remember, you really do have control over your own fate of your health. So if we look out here, how we can help the brain, there's a few simple ways by altering our diet, washing our brains. I will explain that here in a minute too, and reducing stress where we can. So let's start by talking about how we can form some positive habits within our diet. One to note is increasing our olive oil intake. We've seen that olive oil has very beneficial anti-inflammatory attributes due to its high amounts of polyphenols. Polyphenols are a class of compounds that are found in a variety of plant foods like olive oil, spinach, green tea, black coffee, and if you're like me, you will love this one, dark chocolate. You do have to go for the pure healthy stuff, but it's chocolate, so it's great. It's got lots of polyphenols in that, so I can do that too. These polyphenols are converted in the gut to create anti-inflammatory compounds. If we have reduced inflammation, we will definitely have less amyloid plaques form, and in turn, this will create a healthier gut and healthier brain. Another great food that promotes gut-brain health are tree nuts, like walnuts, almonds, pistachios, and cashews, to name a few. The good gut bacteria thrive, and they also diversify themselves in studies where individuals consumed high amounts of tree nuts weekly. A highly diverse gut microbiome creates a better ratio of good gut bacteria to bad. And one other example of great gut food are those leafy greens. The good gut bacteria love the greens, and in one study performed, it showed individuals who ate one serving of leafy green vegetables a day had slowed the gut aging process of the brain, specifically the cognitive decline, by 11 years. That's a big deal. Just a few alterations to the diet can create a huge impact on the gut and the brain health. And then, like I told you, we'll talk about washing our brains. So each of us have an amazing mechanism called the lymphatic system. The system is the cleaner of the brain. This system works at night when our body is in a deep sleep by allowing cerebral spinal fluid to flow through the brain and clean out the debris that may be found between the space of the cells. The lymphatic system requires a great deal of blood to create this cleaning process. So there is one component we have to take into consideration for this wash cycle to occur at night. We need to leave as big of a gap between our last meal of the day and bedtime as possible. When this was researched, we need approximately at least 4 hours between our last meal of the day and bedtime to see the lymphatic system kick in. When this brain wash is able to be done, we wake up restored and rejuvenated because our brains have been cleaned of unneeded debris like amyloids and other bad bacteria that may be in there. And then we all know that high levels of stress aren't great for our mental or physical health, but maybe we didn't realize that it does affect our gut bacteria. So when under stress, the gut promotes an increased population of bad gut bacteria than good, which creates those tiny gaps in your one-layer cell-thick wall. More of that inflammatory cytokines that are allowed to get out of the gut and into other areas of the body where they shouldn't be, like our brain. This can eventually negatively affect our hormones like norepinephrine and serotonin. Some of you might know norepinephrine increases alertness, focus, attention, while serotonin increases feelings of overall wellness and happiness. So no wonder if we have this overgrowth of bad bacteria, we see a lot of depression, anxiety, attention deficit, just to name a few. So if we can find ways to reduce stress in our daily routines, this greatly helps the good gut bacteria to stay in the gut where they're supposed to be. And it also helps avoid overgrowth of the bad bacteria. Whether this is, strength training, walking, meditation, yoga, Your ability to withstand environmental stressors is greatly influenced by your personalized gut microbiome. So these changes can definitely create a better way to invest in your health goals. These approaches to lifestyle changes are worth it to help keep yourself and your family healthy and living long and strong. So I hope you have taken away a few points that will help create your overall brain health and overall longevity. And thank you again for having me.